then, guys? Lambretta vlog time. This is the update, as promised, on the problem I've been having with the scooter, the piston that died and stuff like that. So I've got it all sorted now, all being well. I've been and got the crank sorted out. That's the crank. It was that bearing in there that had gone, the little end bearing, big end bearing, sorry. So I've taken it in and got it repressed, split and repressed, new bearing, and I've got a 110mm conrod put in, which now will allow me to use these pistons, which are used for Suzuki. I can't remember what bike it is actually. It's from a Suzuki, but I can now use these pistons. So I've got a longer conrod, but everything's going to work out the same. So he tells me, and it should do, because the piston, the distance from the way the gudgeon pin goes in, which is in here, to the end of the piston is shorter. So the conrod's longer, but that bit's shorter by the same amount. So it should all just work out. You know, you see the difference there. That's with where the gudgeon pin's, you know, sort of level. So the distance from the gudgeon pin to the top of the original piston is quite far. So you used a shorter conrod, but now I'm using these pistons, so it's a shorter distance. So it should all be all right. He reprofiled the head and got rid of some of the horrible dents and stuff. But you can't take it all the way. I mean, there's still some remaining, but you need to obviously stop where it's going to give you the right sort of squish, right clearance. So that's been matched to that. So all being well, everything should be fine. This is the mag housing. I've had that completely in bits and changed the bearing and the oil sealing there. I've put a new bearing in here, the main drive side thingy bearing, and that's a new one in there and a new oil seal on the other side of that. So I'm going to just sort of crack on and go ahead and see what I can do, get the crank in. Once the crank's in, this is the only thing I've never done, to be honest. I've never done the crank and I've never put a gearbox together. So this is going to be the first time I've ever put a crank in. But I do have the Stickies manual just here for reference, but I know fundamentally what I'm trying to do. I've obviously got to get the crank into there as smoothly and easily as possible. So the way I think I'm going to do it, I'm going to offer it up, see how it's going in. I don't want to start hitting it, because it's not a good idea apparently to start twatting the crank and the bearing. So what you sort of do is you get it in a bit, as much as you can, and then put all the other stuff that comes on this end. When that's sticking through there, you put all the other stuff on, and as you tighten it up with the final big bolt that goes through, as you do that, it'll pull it in, and when it's obviously tight, it's obviously all the way in. So once that's done, I should be able to get it all rebuilt. And with a bit of luck, in a few hours, obviously, once I've got all that in, I can put all the top end back on, and the barrel and the piston and everything. I'm estimating, I don't know, 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours. It shouldn't take that long, I suppose, for a professional, but I'm far from a professional. I should be able to start it up today, all being well. So I'm obviously going to have to rebuild put all that lot back in, but I know how to put the clutch all back in. I had to take the clutch and everything out and the crown wheel because of the way that I've got my chain tensioner set up. I couldn't get the chain tensioner out of the way, and therefore couldn't get the chain to come off. So I had to sort of take all that off. But anyway, I might have gone wrong way around this, but it's not a big job really to put all that back in. That's an hour. But this, all being well, should just go in and get me on my way. Once all that's in and put the mag housing on the other side, I've obviously got to put all the electronic ignition back in, but I marked on the thing, you won't be able to see that, but I've scribed around where the stator plate should be so it's in the correct position, and that should be it. It should start. I'll have to get the timing checked just to make sure I've put it bang on back in the right place. And that should be it. I should be back on the road. So I'm going to crack on. So I'll get back to you when I've made some progress, hopefully once this is in. So see you in a minute. Right guys, progress report. Crank's in. got it in. It went in fairly easily, not completely without a hitch. I sort of put it in, just tapped it a little bit. You're not supposed to tap the end of the crank, but tapped it a little bit just to get it seated. And then, let me just run round. Put the sleeve that's inside all of this stuff in with the cap on. Tightened it up and it drew the crank in for me, which is, according to the manual, what you're supposed to do, because you can easily twist the crank, apparently. So I've done that, put it all in, and I was looking at it and I was thinking, you know, it feels a little bit stiff to me, does this? I thought, have I done it right? What's going on? And because I've never done it, I had no frame of reference whatsoever. I know that when I've taken a crank out of the other engine that's hung up over there, prior to doing that, the crank itself was just totally free. You could just push it up and down. But I spoke to my mate, Mick, and he said that because it's new bearings and new seals and yada yada, it will feel stiff. And that's all I really needed to know. I didn't really want to... I thought I'd come to a point where I couldn't carry on, because I thought, I don't know if this is right. I don't want to build it all together and then find out that it shouldn't have been a little bit stiff at the start. But apparently Mick says it should be fine. He goes, within about 10 miles, it'll just totally free up. It'll feel a bit stiff. He goes, with your new piston rings and new everything, it's all going to be a bit stiff, and you'll have loads of compression. It'll feel like it's going to be a nightmare to start to begin with, but it's because it's all new and needs to be bedded in. So it's in. I'm really pleased. First time I've ever done it. And it's in. So I've done that. I've put this is the magneto housing, where the stator plate goes. And I'm just about to fit that. Once that's on, let me show you. That's this. This is the part of the electronic ignition. I don't know if you know how electronic ignition works. I mean, I'm not an absolute expert on this. I'm not an expert on any of this, but that's in a fixed position, basically. That sits into there. This has got... these are coils of copper with a... I don't know if that's a magnet or not, but it's whatever. The coils of copper, these are definitely magnets on the outside of here. So the electronic ignition works by passing magnets over coiled copper like that, creates electricity, basically. That's how electricity sort of is made, even in a power station, I think. I think it's the same principle. It's to do with coils of copper and magnets flying past them, and that's it. So anyway, this needs to go back in and be bolted on. The wire goes up through the top and then obviously goes and plugs into all this slot up here. Once this is in, bolted in and tight and in position, that can go back on. Then after that, I'm almost home and dry. Then it's just put the barrel and piston on and the head. So I mean, what time is it now? 10 to 6. See how I get on, depending on how many fags I smoke. In an hour or two, I could be at the point where I'm actually trying to start it, which will just be phenomenal. I've obviously got to put all the clutch and all that back in, all into this side, but I've done that a million times. I can do that in a breath. So that's it. So that's the little progress report. That's what I'm on with. This the stator plate here, so it has these elongated slots. That's so that once it's in, you can have it like a bit further that way or a bit further that way, which is like advancing and retarding. They call it the ignition, the point where it actually sparks. You know, in the engine through the HT lead, the spark will occur at a certain point depending on what position this is in. The fact that I've changed the barrel and piston and such shouldn't make any difference. It should still be the same. They call it the ignition timing. Should be exactly the same. But a tip that I got off various people, and it says it in the manual, is because this has already been set up once correctly using a strobe gun, which I do not have. That involves sort of getting it to somewhere near where it'll start and then pointing the strobe gun at it, and it flashes and it tells you exactly when it's sparking. And you put a timing disc on and you can move it forward and backward. But anyway, because this has already been done, the advice was, before you remove it, which is what I've done, go around it and scribe onto the back there. And I'm fairly sure you won't be able to see that. But basically, when that was on, before I undid it, I went round it with a sharp knife, really pointy knife, phone, and scribed it and marked the position where it needs to be. So that should go back on without a hitch. Right, my mum's ringing me, so I'll give you an update in a bit when I get on with a bit further. Right, I've done that. Anyway, I've put the stator plate back in. What I was saying, sorry, I've put that on now so you can't really see, but that stator plate, when you take it off, if you just scribe around it, you know roughly where it wants to go. So all being well, the ignition should be somewhere within reason now. I still need to get it strobed with somebody who's got a strobe gun and a timing disc. But that's it. So I've bolted that on. I've put the flywheel back on. I should have cleaned that really. I don't know why I didn't clean it. Put the flywheel back on. Fed the cable through. I've realised that one of the little spade ends has come off here, and I didn't have a little O-ring thing to seal that, so I'm gonna have to seal that with silicone or something. But I'll worry about that later. So once this is all hooked back up, once I put a new spade on that, then I'm back into my comfort zone, as you know, if you will, of putting the barrel and piston back on, putting the piston in, obviously the barrel and the head back on, move around the other side, put all the clutch and all the chain, all that shit, all the drive mechanism in, and we're nearly starting it, and it's what, 6:05 now, so give it another hour or something. Hour and a half maybe, including finishing everything and smoking 10,000 fags and drinking cans. It'll be there. So watch this space.